Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video, and today I'm going to be doing my first week in my Andrew Cutter video game Showdown. Now you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. Well, allow me to explain. I love video games. I have been playing video games since before I could remember, whether it's with my own systems or playing way back in the day on my brother's video game systems. I have been a video gamer since my birth. I love them. I try to play video games whenever I get a free chance. It's one of my vices. And recently, I've been playing a lot more video games than I usually do. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. Because, see, video games are awesome. Who doesn't love video games? Well, there's a few people out there that don't like video games, but they're the ones that are missing out. See, video games allow you to go to this world that you've never been able to go to before. Do things that you normally aren't able to do. It allows you to see a story unfold before your eyes, and you get to participate in that story. It's a great getaway, and it's a fun activity to do. Of course, as long as you don't do it too much. There's some people out there that do game a little too much. I know who you are. I'm looking at you. I see you right now. I have a few friends that game a little too much, but hey, video games are awesome. Everything in moderation is good, and you know, video games is one of the best things to do. So, in saying that, and because I've been playing so many games recently, I figured I'd dedicate 4 or 5 weeks to my favorite video games and do some video game specials each week. Allow me to explain even further. Basically, what I'm going to do for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I haven't decided yet, is that I am going to do a countdown each Monday. And this countdown will be pertaining to something video game. And these are the countdowns that I'm definitely going to do. I'm going to do my top 10 favorite Metroid games, top 10 favorite Mario games, top 10 favorite Zelda games, and to show that I love games outside of the Nintendo series, I'm also going to do my top 10 favorite Xbox 360 games. Now, I am considering doing a top 10 handheld game countdown, but a lot of those games are going to be Pokemon, so I don't know. Actually, a lot of those games are probably going to be Pokemon, Mario, and Zelda. So I don't know if it would be necessary to do a 5th countdown. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to vote on whether or not I should do that. But yes, like I said, I'm at least going to do 4 countdowns, 1 each week for about 4 weeks. So, what is going to be today's countdown? Well, if you looked at the title page, today is going to be my top 10 favorite Metroid games of all time. So, with that said, let's actually get into this countdown. Well, actually, we can't just yet. I need to give a little introduction. Metroid. I love Metroid. I said this before and I'll say it again. When I look at Nintendo, I like to use a little comic book reference. And in the comic book universe for DC Comics, there's something called the DC Trinity, which is Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. The 3 most recognizable DC superheroes that have been consistently putting out comics non-stop. They're the biggest name in the DC companies, and they're what DC likes to base a lot of their stuff off of. See, when I think of Nintendo, I think of the Nintendo Trinity. This is just me. But I think of Mario, Link, and Samus from Metroid. See, Metroid is a video game series where you play as Bounty Hunter Samus, and you basically go around and you do bounty hunter stuff. But most of your bounty hunter stuff is taking out space pirates and killing Metroids. Yes, Metroids are little, I don't know, jellyfish brain-like things that latch onto you and sucks away your energy. And it is a beautiful video game series. If there's any game that has the word exploration put next to it, it is the Metroid game series. You get that full sense of exploration. You are alone on a planet, an alien foreign planet, the only human there. You get nothing but your power beam, and you have to go around, collect items, defeat enemies, and figure out exactly what's going wrong on this planet. Or space station, which can be the case at times. I just love Metroid so much, and recently I just finished every single Metroid game. I mean, I've been playing Metroid throughout my life, obviously, but there's a few Metroid games that kind of fell through the cracks that I need to go and play. Games like Metroid 3 Corruption and Metroid The Other M and Metroid Prime Hunters. Those were kind of the last games on my Metroid list to play, so I just kind of recently beat them. So now I can actually do a countdown of my top 10 favorite Metroid games. So now, without any further ado, let's jump into my countdown for my favorite Metroid games of all time. So, coming in at number 10 on my favorite Metroid games would have to be, let me just fix that up there, almost dropped it, Metroid 2 The Return of Samus. Metroid 2 The Return of Samus is probably my least favorite of the Metroid games, and the real reason for that is just because, by God, is this game just absolutely ridiculous. It's quite a confusing long game if you don't know where you're going, and in addition to that, it has some pretty hard Metroids to fight. But there's a lot of good that goes with this. There's quite a bit of exploration, although I think at some points you can't move forward because water levels and stuff. But there's a bit of exploration. The game controls are pretty nice. We get the introduction to a lot of favorite Metroid items and abilities. And, you know, the final boss battle was pretty damn fun. It's not a perfect Metroid game, but it is definitely a throwback to what Metroid is about. Exploration. Not being told really where to go and where to do. I actually meant to say where to go and what to do, but I said what to go, what to do, or where to do. But it's a nice throwback to the classic video game exploration that is Metroid. Again, it's not quite as free exploration as the original Metroid game, but it is still good. Fun little story about Metroid 2 The Return of Samus is, and I told this before, I'll tell this again, I actually first played this game with my cousin. And my cousin had this game, and for whatever reason, this was way back. Metroid 2 The Return of Samus came out in, what, 1991, I want to say? For whatever reason, my cousin did not want me playing the game anymore, so we have a place up in New Hampshire, kind of a cottage, and is on, like, a little beach, and he said that he buried the game a foot deep in the sand. So, if I found it, I could get it. For, like, a summer, I was spending my time digging in the sand. I felt like an idiot now that I'm older, but I thought it was pretty funny. And then recently, the last time I saw him, I came downstairs and I looked at him like, Adam, look what I found in the sand. And he started laughing, but a fun story. But yeah, Metroid 2 The Return of Samus is probably my least favorite of the Metroid games, but it is still a good game. Funny fact is, before we continue, we have exactly 10 Metroid games here to talk about too. Because I'm going to count Metroid and Metroid Zero Mission as two different games. So with that said, let's get into the next game, which would be the original Metroid game. Again, like Metroid 2, only more so pure exploration. This is the game that started it all. And if you wanted to get this game, you can get it on the classic NES series for the Game Boy Advance. You can get the classic NES port, or you can get Zero Mission, and if you beat Zero Mission, you can play the classic game. But this biggest attractor to this game is just the fact that you can go anywhere at any time and find out where you need to go. Which brings to one of, I think, its biggest faults, where you can get lost easily and not know where to go at all. Which can be one of the biggest downsides to exploration games. I like freedom of movement, but I also like to at least have a compass. And when I mean a compass, I don't mean an actual compass. I like to know kind of where to go. I'll take, for example, the Oblivion series. Is that you get quests. You don't have to go on the main quest. You can travel around and do whatever you want. But the main quest is always there and always tells you where to go. But you can explore like crazy. The Metroid games, for the original Metroid, it doesn't do that, and that's probably its only fault because the gameplay is solid. The villains, not the villains, the bosses are fun. The enemies are fun. It's a good game, but when it comes down to exploration, it does it a little too good. There needs to be some kind of direction when it comes down to where to go. Besides that, Metroid was a good game in the series, and now we're going to move on to number 8. Coming in at number 8 would be Metroid Prime Hunters for the Nintendo DS. Metroid Prime Hunters was one of the last games I had to play for Metroid. And Metroid Prime Hunters, the reason why it's a little bit lower on the list than other games is this. Metroid Prime Hunters has as much good to it as it does bad. Let me talk about the good. Metroid Prime Hunters, and I'm just going to call it Hunters for short. Hunters gameplay is so smooth on the Nintendo DS. It is great. You jump with A, you move the stylus to aim and shoot. It has a bit of a learning curve, but once you get over that learning curve, it feels like a very natural game. Very natural. The atmospheres are beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And the enemies are challenging, but yet rewarding. Never to the point tedious. You fight other bounty hunters in this. The final boss is pretty challenging, but never tedious. And all the bosses are pretty challenging, but never tedious. Except for, well, there was one that gave me a problem, but don't worry about that. And the puzzles are pretty good. And saying that, there are a few bads on why this is a little low on the list. How can I say this? I do not like guides. The only time I ever use guides for games is for Pokemon. That's only because I need to know where to catch them and how to get certain evolutions or get certain moves or how I should EV train the Pokemon. I don't really like using guides. But for Metroid Hunters, I actually had to use a guide. This game you cannot beat under certain restrictions. Like I have time restrictions. I don't have as much time to play the game as others. But even without time restrictions, this game is incredibly hard to beat in the single player game without a guide of some sort. After the first, what is it? You get 8 crystals. After the first 4 crystals, I did not know where to go half the time. At all. It was a bit confusing. I'm sure if I sat down and I played it consistently, I would be able to figure out where to go. But it was just kind of a rough ride. I didn't really know where to go at times. So, in saying that, that's one of the biggest faults. I mean, it has really good multiplayer, too. But I think one of the biggest faults is that in the fact that almost every boss, except for the last boss, are variations of each other. It would have been nice to have some variety with the bosses. They're fun bosses, but some variety is either 1 or 2 bosses. A big pillar that shoots stuff at you, or a big eyeball that shoots stuff at you. Really, what's with the eyeballs? I'm going to run a D&D quest where we don't fight eyeballs, we fight noses or ears. I mean, eyeballs are in, like, everything. Resident Evil uses eyeballs in all their mutations. Come on, what's with eyeballs? Vati from Zelda was an eyeball. Anyways, yes, Metroid Prime Hunters, it was a good game, but it was difficult at times. But then again, whatever. I mean, if I had more time, I probably could play through it a little bit more. So, next on the list, coming in at number 7 would be Metroid Prime Corruption. Also, I just beat this game. And I had played this with my friend who was a big Metroid Prime fan, so I kind of played it with him. But Metroid Prime Hunter is basically a culmination of everything that was in the Prime series up until this point, with Echoes and the original. It's a good game. It's a solid game. It's a fun game. Interesting upgrades and cool enemies to fight. The only problem I have with this game, and the only problem, is I just don't care. I don't care. I don't know what's going on in the story. I don't care what's going on in the story. I mean, I know what's going on, but I just don't care what's going on in the story. The story was very weak, and it's kind of funny because Metroid, as a game series, the story isn't a big thing. The story is kind of secondary to the exploration and all that. But I didn't even know. I'm sitting there with my friend, and I'm shooting around. I'm like, so why are we going to this planet? Oh, we need to pick up the energy containers. Why do we need the energy containers? Oh, it's for the ship, so we can get into the Leviathan and jump to this space. I'm like, when did they tell us this? Sometime they did. Other than that, I mean, it's a solid game, it's a good game, it's a fun game, but I think of the Prime series, it's my least favorite. Which is funny, because it's actually considered to be a lot of people's favorites in the Prime series. Not mine. But it's still a good game, and I enjoyed myself playing it. You can get that for standard Wii, or you can get the Metroid Prime Trilogy, which you get all the Metroids from the Metroid Prime series in. Moving on to another game which a lot of people will disagree with on my list, but coming in at number 6 would be Metroid the Other M. Here we go. Metroid The Other M is a game that got some pretty mixed reviews from a lot of people. I think the biggest problem with Other M that people had was Samus's voice and her dialogue in there, and a few of the side things, like, for example, Adam needing to authorize me using stuff, which did tick me off at some point, to some degree. This is, I'll say the good and I'll say the bad. Or I'll just talk about Metroid Other M in general. I thought the gameplay was actually pretty good in this. There were some points that I didn't like. For example, I was stationary when I went to first person, and that I don't see why I couldn't use a nunchuck at all to control Samus. It would give me a little bit more options also for game control. But I thought the gameplay was overall pretty good. It tried to marry the classic gameplay from the original Metroid games and the gameplay that we've been getting with the Prime series, which I think it did a fairly good job at. Not perfectly, is a step in the right direction. The story was better than I thought it was going to be. I thought the story was going to be horrible, but there was actually points where I was intrigued and I was interested, and I thought it was actually compelling, particularly with the character of MB. I thought she was an interesting character. We got a little flush out of Samus's backstory. For ill or for good, at least we get Samus's backstory a bit in this. And some of the characters actually had personality to them. Not a lot, but still a lot of personality, like Adam or Anthony. Characters I like. The boss battles were fun. And it was a gorgeous looking game. Here's the problems. Samus's voice was definitely annoying, and not the voice that I would have pictured for Samus. A lot of people complained about Samus talking like this, and talking about stuff, and this, and that. That didn't bother me as much. Her voice bothered me, but that kind of dialogue didn't. Whenever she talked like that, I always thought of it like a log entry or a diary entry. It's kind of like the beginning of Star Trek when Picard goes, Captain Log, Stardate 2336. We are going to rendezvous with... I mean, it's just a standardized diary. It's internal thoughts. I don't think she would put a lot of emotion into it, nor did Captain Picard, Captain Kirk, Cisco, or the evil Captain Janeway did in Star Trek. Oh, wait. There was another captain? We don't speak of that. Anyways, the fact is that didn't bother me. And when she talked normally to other people, she actually had a little bit of a personality there. But yeah, the voice did bother me. And another thing that did bother me is Samus acted younger than she actually is. I like to think of Samus in her late 20s, early 30s. This made her feel like she was in her early 20s. And this is the third to last game in the Metroid timeline. So I didn't like that. And here's another thing. I have no problem with beauty marks, but Samus has a beauty mark right here that was only in this game. Never any game afterwards or any game beforehand. Why? It's random and it makes no sense. Again, I have no problem with something like that. It's just, why is it in this game and not in any other games? It's stupid. But, and also the game was pretty quick and very linear. Very, very linear. I beat this game in like, I think 4 hours. Roughly. Maybe 5. But it was a quick game. Besides that, I actually enjoyed Other M. I know it's not a perfect Metroid game. There's a lot of faults to it. And a lot of people are going to hate me for putting it kind of high on my list. But I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty decent. So yeah. Metroid Other M. It deserves some of the bad rap it has, but not all of its bad rap. Its gameplay was pretty smooth and solid. The story was okay, and the characters were, for the most part, somewhat interesting. Except for Samus. She wasn't. Moving on, we are going to move to... Let me just make sure I get the right game right here. Moving on to number 5, and that would be Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Let me tell you something about Echoes. This game gave me so much trouble when I played through it the first time. I got so pissed that I actually sold it back before beating it. I never do that. Anyways, I bought it again and I played through the game. And at the parts I did have a little bit of a challenge at, I played with my friend. Again, he helped me through, I think, 2 boss battles, really. And he helped me through, like, 1 or 2 other things. But for the most part, I played through this game, and looking back on it now, I actually really enjoyed this game. Interesting concept, cool power-ups, cool level designs. It was fun. I mean, it did give me a headache at some points. Morph Ball Boss. But I actually enjoyed myself a lot when playing this game, looking back. It's also the introduction of Dark Samus, and I enjoyed Dark Samus more in this than I did in Corruption. Yeah, this was a really good game. Metroid Prime 2, Echoes. Really enjoyed it. Next on the list would be... Ah... Coming in at number 4 was Metroid Fusions. Before playing Fusions, a lot of people said, Andrew, Metroid Fusions is a great game. You should pick it up. Andrew, you would really enjoy Metroid Fusions. It is awesome. You know what I hate is when people praise something so much that it makes me not want to play the game. I wholeheartedly was going to go into Fusions being like, oh, this game was okay. Or, let's see if this game really impresses me. You know what it did? It impressed me. Although this game isn't quite as free and open as other games in the series, it does have a little bit of linearness to it. The linearness is kind of masked by the fact that you are able to go around wherever you want, with the exception of a few places. Actually, this does a good job at doing what Metroid had as a problem, and that at least it gives you a compass on where to go. I thought it was cool that Samus got a new suit. I thought the concepts of the enemies were cool. It was always the same enemies, but they were just taking different forms. There was a lot of creepiness with the SAX. I forget. I think it's SAX, the one that pretended to be Samus, and there was some intense moments with that where I'm running away from that. Good boss battles at the end, although Ridley was a joke. And yeah, on a whole, it was a really solid game. Metroid Fusions is probably one of my favorite of the handheld Metroid games. It's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's a game that I would be willing to replay multiple times over. I think there was only one part that I had trouble in, but that's about it. Really enjoyable game. Pick it up if you get a chance. Metroid Fusion. Plus, you can also link this up and get the Fusion suit in Metroid Prime if you want. Okay, so we're down to the final 3, the big 3, and the number 3 on my list would be Metroid Zero Mission. By all rights, Metroid Zero... Wow, that looked weird. It looks different in the thing. Anyways, Metroid Zero Mission is just a retelling and a modernization of the original Metroid game. And in addition to that, you also get a second mission, which is what happened after the first game. I was hooked on this game for the longest time. Gameplay was smooth. It really actually solved the problem with Metroid, where to go and what to do. The graphics were great. The extra mission was fun. This was a fantastic game. One of my favorite all-time Metroid games. I cannot say more about this game other than I talk about remakes like for example, Legend of Zelda 3DS, or Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, stuff like that. And good remakes in comparison to bad remakes. Those are good remakes. This is also a great remake. This did everything that a remake should be doing, taking what was good about the game and adding only good stuff to it. Fantastically done. Very nice, enjoyable. Really like this game. Pick it up. We're down to the final 2. I think everyone knows what those games are, but let's talk about them anyways. Oh god. That needs to be cleaned up big time. I did not know how that happened. Ooh, I'll have to look at that later. Little sidetrack. Number 2 would be Super Metroid. This is the pinnacle of 2D Metroid games. And I think Metroid is better on 2Ds. Despite whatever my number 1 will be. But I played this with another buddy a few times through, and we tried to get the 3-hour mark, although we didn't. I played it with my friend Jay, and we tried to get the 3-hour mark, but we couldn't. We got like 3 hours and 45 minutes, but we got like 97% complete. My friend Matt can beat the game in 1 hour and 46 minutes, 100% complete, and get the special ending. Really nicely done. But so my favorite moments of Metroid was with this game. Smooth gameplay, great upgrades, level designs are good, boss battles are good, with the exception of Mother Brain. Mother Brain at the end is a joke. I had more trouble with Ridley. But fantastic game. Really did enjoy this game a lot. Metroid, Super Metroid, also is an example of what the Super Nintendo could do. Make an amazing game. Um, One of my favorite Metroid games, and is a game that I will hold dear to my heart. Funny story when it comes down to this game is that there is usually I get my games from what is it called? GameStop. Usually. If I want older games, I'll go to my comic store, which is Comically Speaking. However, Comically Speaking doesn't always have every single game that I need. I think there's only been 2 games that I haven't been able to find. Which is funny because all the other games that I need that are old, I'll find there. Comically Speaking, go to them. Best comic store I've ever been to. And it also has a lot of other stuff. Action figures, video games, so on and so forth. Um, but I went to a place, I forget what it's called, but it's located in Salem. Salem, Mass. And it's right next to another comic store, ironically enough, and also to a fortune teller, and also to a bank. Interesting neighbors. And it's a video game store that specializes in old video games like Atari, like Neo Geo, like Nintendo, old NES, SNES, Genesis, name it. They have some of the newer games, but not quite as much, and it specializes in that. And I found this, and they didn't have it loose. They had it only in box, and it was like $70 in box. Because, like Transformer toys, people want the booklet, the instruction booklet. They want the box to be in mint condition. I'm like, that's way too much. I'm not going to buy that. The guy was kind enough to go over and say, hey, I'll take it out of the box. You can buy this alone, and I'll give it to you $30. I'll take that! And I got Super Metroid for substantially cheaper than I really should have got it for. This is really good. If you want to get the game, you can just download it on the Wii. Plain, flat, and simple. It is worth getting. One of the best, if not the pinnacle to Metroid. But it is not my number one. Number one has to go to none other than Metroid Prime. Even though Super Metroid is the pinnacle of Metroid side-scrolling, and I think Metroid is better in the side-scrolling than it is in first-person. That's just a personal opinion. Metroid Prime is my favorite of the games. This was my first Metroid game I actually got to own on my own. And in saying that, it just blew me away with the gameplay, with the exploration, with the bosses. It was quite literally like going to another world, if I could explain it in any way, shape, or form. Best of the Metroid series, Metroid Prime series. Best of the Metroid series is debatable. This was, like I said, first Metroid game I ever owned. I played the other Metroids, but they were always someone else's game, like my brother's game or my cousin's game. And when younger, growing up, I played games on my brother's systems. He owned the Nintendo Entertainment Center system, the SNES, and then Sega Genesis. It wasn't until N64 that I actually got my own system, and between 1993 when Super Metroid came out and Metroid Fusion, there was a huge gap of time. So I didn't get a Metroid game on the N64, but I got it on the GameCube, and it blew me away. This was a great game, fantastic, my favorite Metroid game, period. Everything's just smooth about this game, other than getting the Chozo artifact, but we'll talk about that later. Anyways, that is my countdown for my favorite Metroid games of all time, my top 10 favorite Metroid games of all time. Next week, this is what the order is going to be. Next week, I will be doing my top 10 favorite Zelda games, which everyone will know what number 1 is, but the real mystery is to see where all the others are at, because my favorite Zelda games have changed drastically over the past 2 years, but everyone knows what number 1 will be. But it's more for about the other games. And then I'll do the top 10 Mario, and then my top 10 favorite Xbox games. So with that said, I'm going to end this video here. What is your favorite Metroid games? And in addition to that, do you want me to do a 5th week for handheld games? Let me know. This is Andrew saying, peace out for now.